Hi everyone, welcome to this Q&A live session. My name is Shakina and I am from the OET education team. I'm here to answer all of your OET questions live on air. It doesn't matter what your question is. It could be about reading, listening, speaking, writing. It could be about preparation in general. Whatever your question is, please feel free to type it in the comment section wherever you're joining from, whether that's YouTube or Facebook. And I'm going to do my best to answer your questions. And that is basically the format of today. Um, so if you haven't attended one of these sessions live, like I said, you can put your question in chat or the comment section, and I'll read your question and answer as many as I can in the next 60 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to just check if we've got in, if I've got any questions coming through. Um, and perhaps just to give you a few seconds to warm up, I'm going to just talk about a resource that is a really excellent one for your speaking and writing preparation. Um, so tell me in chat if you have used this resource before. If yes, how you found it. These are our graded sample booklets. These booklets are real samples from candidates just like you who have answered one of the sample tests on our website. And for the answers, so the letters and the speaking role plays have been assessed, they have been graded, and our assessors have given commentary on each letter or each role play, giving you more insight into the strengths and weaknesses of each letter and each role play. So, why this is important is, and how this could help you is, you kind of understand what the assessors are looking for by reading the comments. You can also see what a grade that you're aiming for looks like, what a B letter looks like, what a B role play looks like, and you can kind of draw on those strengths to reflect on your own writing and your own speaking to improve, to help you improve your scores. So this is an excellent resource. It's in the form of a PDF. So something you can download from our website, and I'm going to kind of just put in the chat a link to the resource so that it's something that you can immediately download. Right. So here we are. Just putting that in chat right now. Great. And that has given some of you time to warm up and come in with your questions. All right, so I've got a question here from Mayan on YouTube. Mayan's asking, can we use a pen and paper to take notes in the computer-based test, because I might need to take some notes during the writing test. So Mayan, you're not able to use a pen and paper to make notes. Any notes that you want to make during your computer-based test, you can make in the box that is available. Can make a rough plan there, and then just make sure that you delete it before you submit your answers so that the assessors just see your letter. This is important for you. It's also important for you to know that you can highlight once the writing time starts. You can highlight the case notes. So in case you're worried about not having the pen and paper, while you're practicing, make sure you use the highlight function and get used to how that feels. Also get used to making notes in the box that's available rather than making notes independently on paper. Incorporating this during your practice sessions will really help you and get used to the format and the mode of the test, so that you're very comfortable in doing this on test day. Okay, I've got a question here from Shrishti Khatar on YouTube saying, I face problems with selection of relevant information in writing. So, Shrishti, I'm going to recommend the writing guide to you, which is a guide that covers all of the writing assessment criteria in OET. And in the content criterion, you'll find lots of tips and advice for you in how to select case notes. Very quickly, though, I will tell you that while you're thinking about selecting case notes, think about your reader. Who is going to be reading your letter? What is their role in the patient's care? And therefore, why are you writing the letter to them? These questions will help you understand what case notes you need to select. You will obviously select the case notes that are going to help the reader um, get a full picture of what's happening with the patient, that a picture of what is relevant to what they need to do to continue care for that patient. So always have your reader as the sort of north star, the most important thing at top of your mind while you're selecting case notes, and that should help you make all of the decisions that you need to make about which case notes to select. Um, so I'm just going to put into chat the writing guide. The writing guide is a downloadable PDF that you can, download and keep on your laptop or your mobile. If you feel more comfortable with, hard copy, you could also print it out. That's also an option. But I would recommend highly recommend the content chapter of the writing guide to help you with this particular skill. Okay, I've got a question here from Daniel on YouTube asking, what's the best approach for reading part A? So, Daniel, I'm going to remove your question for a bit, only because I want to put up some tips for reading part A that are going to help me answer your question. So, here they are. With reading part A, it's a good idea to go through the questions in order. Now, the reason for this is because the test is designed to help you get a general idea of the four texts with the matching questions that come first. Once you have a general idea of the four texts by answering the matching questions, you can go into the next two sets of questions, which are which go into looking for specific detail from those texts. So the design of the test is really something that helps you um, answer these questions quickly. Of course, there are some candidates who find it, who feel more comfortable answering the later questions, the later sets of questions first. So if that's you, that's fine. But if you do have some time before your test, I would recommend trying this method, that is answering the matching questions, going through the questions, just trying it out and seeing how what difference that makes, and giving it a shot. Okay, the next step is to use text features quickly to find answers. Now, the kinds of texts that you have in reading part A are everyday workplace texts that you would consult if you're looking after a patient on a busy day in the ward. Now, these texts are usually structured or presented visually in a way that is easy to locate information. Now, what do I mean by that? They have headings, they have subheadings. A lot of them you'll find have bullet points as well. A lot of them also may have tables. Some of them may be presented as charts. So, all of these features are going to help you to read well and efficiently if you use them, because you don't need to read every word from beginning, every sentence from beginning to end, from left to right. You can actually use these features to to locate information that's standing out, and um, they will you don't need to read, like I said, from left to right every word. You can sort of, your eyes can go all over the page, and things that stand out, um, can you can find things that are sort of um, key features in those texts. So that is the second tip. The third tip is related to spelling. Now, assessors tell us that spelling is something that affects, is an area where a lot of candidates lose marks. Uh, in reading part A, you do need to spell 100% accurately. So, copying the word exactly as it is from the text, and also spending a few extra seconds just to check you've copied it correctly, is a valuable use of your time. And then the fourth tip is not to panic about time. Now, it's easy for me to say that. One piece of advice I can give you is to actually work through a reading part A without any time limits first. So don't put the timer on, just see how long you take. Get used to the skills you need to develop while you're answering reading part A, and see how you go. And then, say you take 25 minutes, then lower that time, reduce that time the next time you practice, and give yourself a little less time, because now you would be aware of how you answer the questions, and you would have probably had a little bit more time to work on those skills. Gradually work your way down to the 15 minutes. So you get more confident as you work, reduce the time. So you're not focused on the time, you're focused on the skills you need to develop, and you'll find that you'll be able to answer the questions in that 15 minutes. All right, so let's go back to the questions. All right. I've got another question here from Mayan, saying, do we have to capitalize regular words in the listening test, like the first word of a bullet point, for instance? So remember that in listening part A and in reading part A, capitalization doesn't matter. So that you shouldn't need to worry about that. In reading part A, you can copy the answer exactly as it appears in the text, and in listening part A, you can use a small letter or a capital letter to begin, but it really doesn't matter. If you are using all capitals in listening part A or in reading part A, so that's the style that you've chosen, to write all of your answers in all caps. That's also fine, but make sure that you use that style consistently in all of those, in all of those answers. So I've got a question here from Saiteja, um, who's asking, um, who's wondering if there are very few people talking about OET pharmacy, and asking if it's not popular or if all OET tests are similar. So, Saiteja, to answer your question, there are 12 OET professions, So there are 12 versions of the test. When you when you take the test, your reading and your listening test are the same for all professions, but your writing and your speaking tests are profession specific. Now, what do we mean by that? That means that those scenarios in your speaking and your writing are something that you would typically see in your profession. And that is why there is a difference in the professions. That's why there are 12 versions of the test. It's so that healthcare professionals can feel, have a realistic something that is real to their work, and it really tests what you would be doing in the workplace. So OET pharmacy is very much it's similar. That is, listening and reading are the same, but it's also specific and therefore different from the other professions because writing and the speaking components, the subtests are specific to pharmacy. Now I'm going to put into the chat our sample tests page. Our sample tests page is where you can find a test that is specific to your profession. So depending on which mode you want to take the test in, whether that's OET on computer or OET on paper, you can navigate to that page and then you'll see all of the professions and you choose the profession you're in, and you'll see all of the sample tests related to that profession on that page. So it's something that you can go and check out and get a feel of what kinds of tasks, what kinds of scenarios you might encounter in your test, and that are sort of typical of OET pharmacy. So I'm going to just put into chat now our sample tests page. All right, so that's coming through in chat. Right, I've got a question here from Judith. Judith saying she just moved to England and is preparing for OET on her own to work as a nurse. Could could I pass by working with the OET book and YouTube videos, or do I need an academy? I've got a B1, B2 Cambridge, and I think that's your language level that you're referring to. So, Judith, when we are talking about test preparation, there are two kinds of skills that we say that candidates need to be successful in OET. One is your test taking skills, and the other are your language skills. Your test taking skills are skills like your time management, your ability to answer multiple choice questions, your knowledge of the format of the test. All of those kinds of things are your test taking skills. The other type of skill are language skills. Language skills is refers to your grammar, your vocabulary, your reading proficiency, your fluency with reading, with listening, and obviously, your speaking and writing. All of those are your language skills. So when you're preparing for OET, you need to think about how good you are at each of these types of skills. Um, when A lot of our OET material and YouTube videos, a lot of it has a mix of both language skills and test taking skills. Um, but if you find that you are someone who, like you've said, at that B1, B2 level, it is often a case that you would need to work on your language skills a lot more then you need to work on your language skills first and build those up, and then move to your test taking skills. So I would say you could definitely do it on your own. You would need to do a lot more than just the OET books and YouTube videos. You'd need to look at different resources that will improve your language skills, your grammar in general, your vocabulary, um, your reading. So you're going to have to do a lot of practice outside of OET tasks. To do this efficiently, you could work with a teacher to kind of help you understand your strengths and weaknesses. Teachers can give you very targeted practice from the areas of grammar and vocabulary that you need to work on. So it's always a good idea to work with a teacher. We've got an excellent group of teachers that we recommend on our website. So I'm going to show you right now our study with a teacher page and how to get there, just so you have an idea of sort of where you can go to get help if you need it. So I'm just going to share my screen for a second. So hopefully you're able to see my screen. So this is oed.com, where you can find all of our study resources. Material is the ready page. And in the red, once you see the ready drop down, there's several options. There's sample tests. That was the link I just shared earlier. We've got blogs on study tips and inspiration, and of course, subtest specific blogs. This study with the teacher page is where I'm going to take you now. We have a global network of teachers, and you can use the filters here to find teachers that are close to you, if you'd like to do face to face. But there's also a lot of teachers and schools listed here. um, in fact, most of them offer online training as well. So all you'd need to do is filter by country. So let's say since you are in the UK, let's put that in. So you've got a lot of options there. If you'd like to go online, you can choose that option. Profession, you're a nurse, and you can see lots of options there for you. You'll find, a link to their website, contact numbers if they're available, and you can use those to speak to the school and get in contact with the right teacher. All right, I'm just looking for some newer questions that um, have been coming in. Um, I've got a question here from Mrs. Everest on YouTube saying, what do you say about time management in reading parts A, B, and C? What strategy do you advise? So, overall, when you're thinking about the reading test, for reading part A, you have 15 minutes to answer the 20 questions. The strategy there is, we would recommend you answer all of the questions in order, starting with the matching questions. Those questions help you understand what the texts are about, and a broad overview of the text, so that when you come to the next sets of questions, you already have an idea of where you could find the answers to those questions. So that's sort of the tip with managing time in reading part A. With parts B and C, you have 45 minutes. So the way that you would typically divide up that time is to aim to answer the reading part B questions in about 10 to 12 minutes, which leaves you about 35 minutes between the two part C's. And then again, splitting your time equally between the two part C's. So you have about 15 to 17 minutes to answer the part C. So that's what we would advise for how you can manage your time for all of the three parts of the test. Um, I'm going to pick up this question here from Daniel saying, asking, is it necessary to read the options in listening part B? So, Daniel, yes, it's absolutely necessary to read the options in listening part B. When you think about the three things that you see on your question paper in listening part B, you see the what we call the context sentence. So that sentence tells you, who's speaking, where they are. So that's the first sentence you see. Then you see your question, and then you see your answer options. Now, the most important part, I would say, is the context sentence, because you do get a few seconds to read the context sentence before the audio starts. In those seconds, you can think about what you might hear, and you also have the question there to help you think about what you might hear in the audio. So those two are important to pay attention to, but that's not to say that the options aren't necessary to read. You must read the options definitely while the audio is playing. If you didn't have time before the audio starts, um, the important thing, though, to think about when you are reading the options is to think about how the options are different from the other. What's the point of difference in the options, so that when you do, when as the audio is playing, you can correctly identify your choice, your choice of the answer. It's easy to pick an answer before the audio stops, but wait for the whole audio to complete, to finish before you choose your answer, and make sure that you're not just listening for synonyms or trying to word match. Make sure that your and the answer that you've chosen completely fully answers the question, and it's not just based on word matching. So hopefully those tips will help you to understand what you should pay attention to in the options for listening part B. Shrishti saying, kindly share some tips for speaking. Shrishti, I'm going to recommend a great resource that's on our OET store. It's a completely free resource. It's our speaking booster course. It will take you about an hour to finish, and it walks you through all of the clinical communication criteria. It has wonderful short exercises that you can take that will help you understand the criteria and the skills that you require uh, to demonstrate in your speaking role play. So I'm going to post that in the chat right now. The speaking booster course is free, like I mentioned. So all you need to do is just sign up. Sort of go to our store where it is, click on it, sign up, and you will have access to our learning platform where you can access the course and complete it. So that's where I would encourage you to go for some really good right. right, I'm just looking for a question here from Joby on Facebook. Joby's asking, how can we access the OMR or the answer sheet? So if you download our sample tests, one of our sample tests from our website, you will see that in listening, for the paper-based test, your answers are written or marked in the question paper itself. For listening part A, you have blanks in notes that you need to complete. And for parts B and C, you have multiple choice questions which have circles or lozenges next to each option that you need to shade in with a 2B pencil. So that's how you complete your answers for listening. For reading, reading part A is the same. You've got 20 questions which you need to answer, with your pencil or your pen. You complete those in the question paper itself. For parts B and C, you have the same circles or lozenges that you need to shade with a 2B pencil to indicate your answer. And like I said, these are available on our website. Go on our sample tests page. You can download those there. So I'm just going to put the sample test page in chat again for you to check out. All right, Sandreka saying, can I take notes while taking computer-based speaking test? Can we use pen and paper, or are we not allowed to take notes? Yes, you can take, you have the option of bringing a blank sheet of paper and using a pen or a pencil to make notes during your preparation time. So that's when you make notes. You'll always have the roll card in front of you, and you can make notes during the preparation time. We generally it's not a good idea to make notes while you are speaking. While you're speaking, focus on the patient and interacting with them. That is your interlocutor. So not during the role play, but yes, during preparation time, you do have that option. Right. So we've got um, some great questions that I can see in chat, which I'm getting to. Just looking for some new questions. All right, I've got a question or a comment here from Alberta on YouTube, who's saying they failed the reading part twice, but had great scores on the rest of the subtests. Writing 360, listening 400, speaking 390, which are excellent scores. Well done. But reading slightly lower, 310. So how can I get 350 in reading, and where should I focus more in which part? So with reading, I would sort of recommend two things for you. One is to reflect on your strengths and weaknesses. So have a look at one of the sample tests that you've completed recently and think about each section, where you got answers incorrect and why you might have got those answers incorrect. So thinking about where you tripped up and why that might be the problem. So Have a look at each part, A, B, and C, and identify the area where you need to work on more. That's the first thing. Now, you might have already done that. So, the other tip that I would recommend is for you to focus on building your reading fluency in general. Often, when you are thinking about practicing and thinking about improving your score, you might feel like you need to take more practice tests. But actually, um, practice tests uh, don't improve your reading in general. They improve your test taking skills, so you get better at taking a reading test, but you're not really improving your reading skills, which is what you need to really see a difference in your scores. Now, how do you do that? So, taking the area where you've sort of identified what your weakness is, so let's say it's reading part C, um, think about the kinds of texts that you read in part C. In part C, you have um, articles of general medical interest, where you have a lot of opinions that are presented by the opinions of different experts on a medical issue or development. Um, you might have patient experiences and sort of someone the writer analyzing that from different angles. Those are the kinds of things that you would read in part C. So then what you would do is then get a hold of more of that kind of reading material, non-OET practice tasks, non-OET material that is going to and sort of work your way through building your fluency in reading more of that kind of texts, of those kinds of texts. So that would be my advice, those two areas. So the same goes with reading part A. If that's where your weakness is, then reading and getting more familiar with reading dosage charts, treatment pathways more efficiently. The kinds of things you read in part A is where I would focus my attention. And then for part B, you have more workplace communication like guidelines, memos, policies, emails. So reading more of those kinds of texts. I'm going to put into chat our Reading Week playlist. Now, Reading Week playlist addresses both of those aspects that I've talked about. It gives you detailed strategy for part A, B, and C, but it also, in two videos, gives you great suggestions and recommendations for what skills you need to improve for those parts and how you can improve those skills, how you can build reading into into your daily routine. So I'm going to put the Reading Week playlist into chat as a great resource for you to improve your reading skills. So great questions. Um, just picking out some new ones. A lot of questions about reading today. Um, just looking for some new ones. Um, I've got a question here from Ramya saying, can we write heading names in reading part A question booklet? So, Ramya, if you're talking about reading if you're talking about the matching questions, so there are three types of questions in reading part A. You have matching questions, you have short answer questions, and you have gap fill or fill in the blank questions. Um, in all of those questions, you need to make sure you follow the instructions about the answer that you need to write. In reading, in the matching questions, you need to type or write out A, B, C, or D, the text, the letter connected to the text as your answer. You do not have to write the heading of the text. All you need to do is write A, B, C, or D to answer the matching questions. And that is in your instructions. So make sure you read those instructions the next time you open a sample test and follow those instructions. For the short answer or the matching questions, it's a word or a short phrase that you need to use to complete the answer. Again, you do not need to write the heading of the text from where you got that answer. Remember that you need to be precise and follow the instructions. So, writing something extra beyond what is required of you will, in fact, cause you to lose marks. Um, it will cause confusion. The assessors won't know what your answer is. So, stick to following the instructions. Again, just looking for some newer questions. So I'm going to pick up this question here. From Anna on Facebook saying, I'm taking my exam soon and I'm very anxious and scared. So, Anna, absolutely understand that you might feel anxious and scared, especially leading up to your test. It's something that's quite natural, and something that a lot of candidates, if not all candidates, feel as they approach their test day. If I were taking the test, I too would feel quite anxious and nervous, no matter how well I had prepared. So some of that anxiety or test day nerves, some of that is healthy. So it's a normal part of how your body reacts, and some of that is going to help you sort of really stay on your toes and put your body into that mode of performing as best as possible during the test. So some of it is it's normal, and some of it is helpful. It can also be a little bit. There are times, of course, when your anxiety and your nervousness can take over. So there's different things that you can do to help that. Um, I'm going to find actually a blog article that has some really good tips on how you can manage your anxiety. One thing that I would recommend you do is to create in the time leading up to your test is actually to create a personal checklist of things that you know in each part of the test that you need to pay special attention to, while you're, areas that you often trip up. So have that so that you know that, it's not everywhere that you are making mistakes. It's only certain areas that you really need to pay attention to. And of course, think about what you're doing well, what your strengths are in the test as well. So as I said, I'm just going to try and uh, find that article for you, on how you can manage, your test day anxiety. Just actually looking that up, but I'm going to put that into the chat as soon as I find it. And here it is. Just putting that into chat for you to check out. All right. Daniel asking, can I use medical abbreviations as in the question? So, for example, can I use BP for blood pressure? So, yes, um, you can use abbreviations if the abbreviation or the abbreviated form is more common than the full form. So, MRI, um, X-ray, those kinds of things are more common than writing the full word out of, all of those words out. So that's definitely when you can use an abbreviation. um, for blood pressure, I would write out the full word just because it's more formal. And I would write that out. Remember that the assessors are not counting words. So if you're looking to abbreviate words just to reduce the word count, that's not going to be something that the assessors are uh, going to really look into. They're going to look into whether the abbreviation, like I said, is appropriate for the context. So if the short form is more commonly used and known and standard, then use that. If the short form is known, very well known, and the reader is familiar, is and the reader is familiar with that short form, then use the short form or the abbreviation. So, for example, COPD for a respiratory specialist would be appropriate. In all other cases, it is a good standard practice to use the full form. So, at the first instance, use the full form, and then have the abbreviation in brackets, and then you can use the abbreviation if you refer to that in the rest of your letter. All right, I've got a question here from Prema on YouTube saying, in speaking, explore the treatment options. Does it mean to find out or explain? So, Prema, I don't have the full context of your role play, so I'm not sure what else the task says, but I can comment about the word explore, because that's often something that is used in speaking role plays. And yes, it does mean when you explore something, it means you find out more. It is something that you might ask questions, you might ask open-ended questions, you might ask questions about how the patient is feeling. Um, all of those things where you are gathering information from the patient is appropriate for that word explore. It wouldn't mean you explain something. because when you're explaining something, you're generally giving a lot of information. So you're not really exploring, you're not really getting information. Right. I've got a question here from Joby asking, is there any option to know where someone's lost their score in any of the subtests? So Joby, when you get your OET results sheet, you get two types of scores. You get your letter grade and you get a numerical score from 0 to 500. The numerical score will tell you how far you were your from the next grade or your desired score. Um, and so that gives you a good idea of where, where, how, how far you were and how much effort you would need to put in. Um, just like all other standardized tests, we're not giving specific feedback on each part or where personalized feedback on each subtest. But this is something that you can work with a teacher, where you can find out what your strengths and weaknesses are in each subtest and work with a teacher who is trained, who knows the test well, who's helped other candidates just like you. Um, those kinds of teachers can really help you understand where you need to improve. And what they can tell you is not just where you went wrong, but like I said, how you need to improve or what skills you need to work on to improve and better that score. Um, and I'm going to put into chat the Ready Study with a Teacher page, which is on our Ready page. And this is where you'll find a list of all of our accredited or all of our official partners that will be able to help you with exactly the kind of thing that I've just spoken about. Right. I've got a question here from Chenu saying, are there any tips for listening part B? So yes, Chenu, absolutely. I'm going to put your question off screen for a bit and put up my tips for you to explain them as well. So the first step is to use the context to anticipate the conversation. There are three things in your listening Part B question paper. You have the context sentence, which tells you, where the conversation is taking place or who's speaking. You have the question and you have the answer options. The context really helps, if you use it to activate your brain, um, about the kinds of, what kinds of conversations that you've heard in real life that are, like this. Once your brain starts thinking along those lines, it sort of gets ready to listen. So anticipate or try to think about the context and what you might hear in this conversation, kind of based on your expertise or your experience of these kinds of conversations. Because what you listen to in listening part B are workplace conversations. So you hear handovers, you hear safety briefings, hear maybe a snippet of a feedback session. Um, you hear a patient talking to a healthcare professional or vice versa. These are the kinds of things that you hear, common workplace things that you hear in listening part B. So this is not something that, as a working professional, you listening part B is not something that's completely alien. It's actually very much part of what you're already familiar with. So that context in the question paper is going to really help you if you pay attention to it. The second tip is to identify what makes each answer option different. So pay attention to the verbs that begin the answer options, that are in the answer options, and think about what the difference is between the answer options. Um, so that you're not word matching or just listening for random words. You actually think about the meaning of each option and how each meaning is different from the other. And then the third tip is to listen to the whole audio before deciding on your answer. It's very easy. Sometimes you think you've heard the answer and then to select that as the answer before the audio stops. But sometimes, you know, there might be a part of that option that is towards the end of the audio. So you need to listen to the full audio before deciding on your final answer, because the full option or the full answer needs to be in the audio, needs to answer the question for it to be right. All right. So those were my tips for listening part B. All right, and I can see some questions here for um, tips for writing and speaking from Paul on Facebook. Uh, Paul, I'm going to recommend to you the writing guide and our speaking guide for great tips on how you can improve your score based on the assessment criteria. So the writing guide has chapters for each of the assessment criteria. It has examples from different letters, and it has an explanation of the criteria and what tips you are going to help you improve your score. Speaking guide is similar. You've got examples, you've got an explanation of the criteria, and tips for you to improve your score. So I'm going to put those in the chat right now. They are on our ready page. So just putting those in the chat. And the writing guide. And these are free PDFs that you can download. And like I said earlier, you could even take a printout if you wanted to. Got a question here from Inha. If you fail one part of the exam, can you do only that part again? So we do offer single subtest retakes. So if you have failed in one part of the test, you can take just that subtest. However, and this is very important, whether this is accepted by the regulator you're applying to is something that you need to check. So we would obviously you would only do that if your regulator accepts that. If your regulator does not accept single subtest retakes, then obviously that's not something that you we would recommend you do. I'm going to put into chat our Who Recognizes OET page. This has a list of all of our regulators, and where you can there are links to their website, so you can go and find out exactly what's on their site and what they're saying about these about this single test retake. All right, so with that, we've come to the end of the hour. And now, don't worry if you haven't had your question answered today. You can join me next on Tuesday, the 9th of September, and all of those times listed there. It's exactly the same time. But you can also contact us on Facebook Messenger, and we will endeavor to send you a reply within 24 hours. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, bye for now.